few weeks ago, I had one of the best weeks of my career. Brilliant client sessions, a workshop that got amazing feedback, a speaking gig that reminded me why I do this, and I was even interviewed by a journalist about this channel. It looked and felt successful. And then on the Friday night, I cried, like properly cried. I'd been traveling for work and I got picked up from the station by my boyfriend. And as soon as I closed the passenger door, I just sobbed. I felt completely overwhelmed. Nothing had gone wrong. If anything, everything had gone right. So why did I feel so wobbly? And more importantly, how was I about to spend my weekend giving myself the Sunday scaries only to show up on Monday telling other people how to build sustainable, aligned careers? There's something deeply uncomfortable about giving advice you believe in and then not quite feeling it yourself. So mid-meltdown, I did what any rational 21st century woman does. I opened AI. Not because I think it replaces a coach or because I wanted answers, but because I needed help untangling my own thinking. And what happened next shifted something. Firstly, I realised that rightfully so, AI isn't a compass, it's a mirror. It reflected my patterns back to me. And then secondly, I came out of that 15-minute back and forth feeling so much calmer. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what I did. The prompts I used, how I structured the conversation, what came out of it, and what I took from the process. I'll share the screen recordings so you can see it with the actual messy thinking. If you've ever had a dream week that still left you exhausted, this might be useful. Let's get into it. Okay, this already feels really exposing, but I'm going to share with you exactly what I wrote. Now, just a quick caveat, I voice dictate everything that I put into AI, so this is why it feels quite wordy. But here you can see. I'm feeling quite exhausted, overwhelmed, and I read something recently about how you can only be as successful as your nervous system can handle. I want to ask you a series of questions to unpack the work that I do, where I spend my time, and what's on my mind, and help me get to the bottom of what I need to do to start getting clarity, moving forward, next steps, and to help me grow my business. The thing that I loved about the initial response was it says here, before we rush to next steps or growth, the work here is to slow the chaos down enough that your thinking brain can come back online. And it gave some suggestions of how we were going to approach this. So we're going to break it up into 3 layers. Load, what's actually on you mentally and practically. Leakage, that's a horrible word, where your energy, attention and time is draining you unnecessarily. And leverage, what actually moves the business forward once things are quieter. So it talks about starting with understanding, not fixing. I love the 3 questions that it's asked me here. What feels heavy right now? Where are you spending your time in a typical week? And you'll see here, what's looping in your head when you try to rest? There's also this final question, if nothing changed for the next 6 months, what worries you the most? Now, you'll see my blue box where I'm talking here is incredibly long. That's because I was going through these questions one by one, just getting everything out of my head. And I found it really therapeutic just to dump it. What I found really interesting was just how quickly it unpacked it and talked about what was actually happening to me. This is really long, so I'm just going to summarize. But essentially, I was talking about both the volume of work that I have, the constant switching between different areas of my portfolio career. So one day I might be doing client work, a couple of hours I might be prepping for some public speaking, then I might be doing some filming. It just all felt like there was a lot and I had no breathing space in between. Now look, you can see I've written a lot here and I am going to blur a couple of things just for client sensitivity. But you can see where I'm talking about the volume of work, I'm not giving myself any breathing space. I feel like also because I'm doing too much, I'm then feeling quite exhausted, where actually if I did slightly less, I'd have more energy and I'd probably do that less better. I also talked about some things in my personal life. My grandparents are elderly and need a bit more support than usual at the moment. And that is a reality for so many people. We all have a life outside of work that can sometimes feel quite overwhelming. I also talk a lot about feeling like I'm going to let people down. I'm a bit of a people pleaser by nature, and I just felt like this feeling of always being on the back foot, which I really wanted to overcome. Something that's really interesting that it helped me see was it's not like I'm unmotivated, but the issue is about capacity of work and that containment. So it says here, your nervous system is doing exactly what it does when a smart, high-performing person carries too much responsibility, too much visibility pressure, too little recovery, and an unresolved fear around safety. That's both financially and letting people down. It pointed out to me a few things. Firstly, it says I'm doing high output work without any buffers. I'm not giving myself space around it to prepare or decompress, and then I feel exhausted. Well, this was quite confronting. It says, your fear brain is running the business. It pulls out a line where I said that I worry if I'm not overworking and constantly putting myself out there that I'll stop earning. Summarising what I was saying into this loop of I'm fearful around money, letting people down, which causes me to overwork. The overwork causes exhaustion. The exhaustion means I'm less clear on things, and then not being clear on things gives me more fear. So it's this cycle that I really need to stop. Here's that word I hate again, leakage. It's like almost as bad as hearing the word moist. I pointed out some key things that are draining me. A lot of business admin, not delegating properly, some emotional labour, and feeling like I'm mentally always on. I really struggle to switch off and rest. This is a bit of a brutal line. Together, they're death by 1,000 paper cuts. This feels like really quite deep and personal, but I've had years of therapy because my core belief is I'm not good enough. And it pulled it out here again in this thread. It said that I'm not enough story is a symptom, but it's not the truth. And right now, my brain is interpreting exhaustion as evidence of inadequacy. The summary of all of this is it's telling me I don't need to do more, but I need to contain the work that I'm already doing. And it breaks up suggestions into 3 phases. Phase 1, create breathing room without losing income. That's a win. Phase 2, reduce decision load, especially admin and unpaid asks. And 3, relocate my energy towards leverage, so visibility that compounds. In this next round, it asked me to clarify a few points that put pressure on me. Which parts of your work give you energy after you do them? Which parts reliably drain you, even if you're good at them? What are you most afraid would happen if you worked 1 fewer day a week, you said no to 30 to 40% of your inbound asks, or you let your VA take things off your plate imperfectly? And then the final question in this section, if your job for the next 3 months was to protect your energy, what immediately needs to change? My answer showed me that the work that gives me the most energy is when I'm leaning into my role in the career space versus myself as a marketing consultant. I love speaking events. I love workshops. I love working with people where you just see this little light bulb moment about something they want to change or do with their career. Over the last year or so, I've had a few one-off brand partnerships where I'm making one single piece of content. I don't think it's the best use of my time, and I don't think it's great for my credibility either. I want to do long-term stuff. I want those bigger, longer-term brand projects. Actually, this is not too bad to hear. You can see here when I'm talking about the thing that I'm most afraid of if I work less is that people would think I was rude, that people wouldn't come back to me, or that maybe I'd lose my visibility or credibility in the industry. I talked about my VA, and if I offloaded her, it's not because I don't think she could do it. I actually know she could do it so much better than me. But I sometimes feel like I don't know enough, like what I can delegate. And that's something that actually we've had a great conversation about since. I'm blurring this section here because it does talk about specific clients, but I know that I want to start reducing some of the consultancy work that I do, and I've put the wheels in motion for that since. Okay, here's an interesting response. It summarised that what energises me is expansive, future-facing work that helps me build visibility and meaning and momentum, and is the direction where I know my business is heading. What drains me is quite transactional and fragmented work, one-off bits and pieces that don't necessarily align again with where I want to head. I love how cutting it can be sometimes. You're trying to build a second act business while still behaving like someone who needs to be available, agreeable, and grateful. Oh, the burn, but it's so true. This mismatch is what's exhausting you. You are no longer in the phase of saying yes so people don't forget me. You're firmly in be selective so the right people understand me. But your nervous system hasn't been given proof that it's safe to do so just yet. So let's create proof. We quickly moved on to looking at what needs to change, and it highlighted a few things. One, that I need a clear centre of gravity. At the moment, I've got too many things going on. that the consultancy work I do becomes finite. It's not default. It's something that I look to end within the next 12 months. And then thirdly, when I create one-off pieces of content for brands, it's not working for me and I am going to pull back on that. This has come up a lot in the last few months in conversations I'm having, feelings. So it was no surprise that it talked about delegation, and I really need to start with offloading decisions. It talked about what my VA can help me with immediately. So that's things like inbox triage, scheduling meetings, follow-ups, even things like on my client-facing days, just getting on top of things or acknowledging emails, say, look, I'll get back to you in due course, rather than what ends up happening at the moment is I'm doing 9 to 5, I either come home and feel exhausted and I just don't reply, and then they don't get an answer for like 3 or 4 days, which is not how I want to behave. Chasing invoices or contracts and just organising some of the logistics around the speaking events I do. This was a little bit of a burn. You're not delegating because you're unclear. You're unclear because you haven't delegated. Ouch. It pulled up a lot about my structure as a creator and how I make content. I talked about at some point, might I need to hire a content manager? And it talks about my instinct for that being bang on, someone who helps set cadence, plan filming days, turn my thoughts into a bit more structure and plan, and also remove decision fatigue. Then it asked me one final grounding question before we move further. If your nervous system felt safe and calm, what kind of business would you actually want to build? Oh, fucking hell, this is really exposing now. Okay, I'm just going to go with it. Okay, this is what I wrote. I mentioned that I would love to be a career where I'm a bit more public facing. I'd like to have bigger opportunities, maybe TV appearances, TV shows. I always say to my friends, I'd love to be the Annika Rice of careers. I absolutely loved watching Challenge Annika growing up. I just thought she was so cool. And I imagine like, what's the careers version of that? And not necessarily just a TV show, but like this curiosity to take on a challenge or learn more or kind of bring people together. I talk about building a business where I can investigate careers a little bit more, inspire others, and build a team around me to support that. I would call the business careering. I want to make it much bigger and more exciting than even I think is possible. This was when I really had this aha moment. That vision is not unrealistic. It's incompatible with the way you're currently working. And it talks about what I'm describing is not a marketing consultant's career. It's a public-facing, IP-led presenter, creator, founder career. I really love this reframe. I hadn't looked at it this way before. It says you are not transitioning someday into careering. You are already in the transition, but you haven't restructured your work to support it. And I really do resonate with this because I don't see people talk about the transition from being employed to being self-employed and the mindset shift that takes. Now, for some people that clearly comes naturally, but I've had like almost 2 decades of working in one very specific way, one structure, and I'm having to learn about work all over again. So it kind of makes sense that there's a little bit of a lag and I just need to play catch up with that. This is something that really excites me to read this. It says, what changes immediately? I need to reposition myself. So now at the moment, when I introduce myself to anyone, I say I'm a marketing consultant and a careers content creator. And it says what I need to do is start saying, I'm building Careering, a platform that explores modern careers through content, community, and speaking. Everything else becomes secondary to that. That really excites me. And then it goes into the content I make across various platforms. I have felt like in the last maybe 6 months or so before I started recording this channel, I was getting a little bit lost with my content and a bit scattergun. And now it's saying that it's the infrastructure to what I do rather than just a space for creative output. This is the point that both scares me and excites me. Saying no becomes a brand signal, not a risk. Right now, you're afraid that no equals rude, forgotten, and irrelevant. In reality, clarity attracts better opportunities. Selectivity increases intrigue. Focus builds authority. The people who matter will come back. The ones who don't were never building your future anyway. And the thing that I needed to hear the most during this session, you're exhausted because your future self is pulling you forward and your current structure is holding you back. It gave me some suggestions of where we could go next if I wanted to take that conversation further. Firstly, it helped me define what careering actually is. I think I have had this in my head for a little while and it was just a really nice, succinct way to start clarifying what it is, what it isn't, and therefore where my focus needs to be. Next, it helped me see that the next year is a bit of a bridge year for me. It's a year of transition. And it gave me 3 operating principles. It either needs to fund careering, it needs to build careering, or it needs to feed it. And the reason I really love this is because anything that comes into the business, it has to either do one of those 2 things. If not, then I have to say no. Now, I will blur some of this out because there's a bit of client information in here. But I really like the fact that it talks about what should stay for now and what goes. And this is what I talked about earlier. So much of this wasn't giving me direction. It was just clarifying the things that I knew in my head, in my gut, and gave me the conviction to go with it. And similarly, I saw it with things I need to let go of. I have known I've needed to, and I've had so many friends, workmates, whoever, tell me this, and I'm kind of annoyed that it took AI to give me a bit of a, yeah, I'm going to do that moment. Delegation, this is a big thing that comes up. I've mentioned it before, and I have since had conversations with my VA, and she's like, right, I'm going to be firmer with you. I'm going to take more of your plate. And that feels really good. It doesn't feel scary. It feels like quite a relief. Now, look, you can see this is a long conversation. I'm not going to go into all of this, but I think it is really helpful to say, look, all of this happened in the space of 15, 20 minutes. I got so much out of it. We touched on my fear around money, and it finally gave me clarity about the shift that I'm making. So I'm moving away from being the operator of the business, the admin, the scheduling, all the stuff in the background. And I'm becoming the face, the maker, and the meaning maker of the business. So I'm thinking, creating, interpreting, presenting. This is a great line here. Trying to build a public-facing career while acting as back office support is what's exhausting you. A very quick summary here where it says what my job is now and what it isn't. And I've been doing too much of the what it isn't. So yeah, this is, again, like so much of this was just a massive kick up my arse. This final section was so great for helping me start to overcome my fear around money. It says, I don't need to earn by doing everything. I earn by doing the right things. Admin does not earn you money. Content, visibility, authority, speaking, IP do. Delegation isn't spending money. It's redirecting effort towards income-producing work. Now, I stopped here because it felt like I'd got so much out of that conversation. And again, this was like 15 minutes of back and forth. It was so quick. I wanted to pause, come back to it. And actually, I have come back to this so many times. I've even shared it with my VA to go, right, this is how we're going to work moving forward. And it has just made for me feeling more relieved, the workload being a lot clearer, and it's been really helpful, again, to be a bit of a mirror to my own thinking and just make sure I'm moving forward in a way that works and is sustainable and is going to help the business grow. Okay, here's what actually shifted for me. AI helped me commit to and feel reassured about the career I'm building. It gave me permission to let some things be smaller, to see that my portfolio career had a centre and a few satellites, and that was okay. It helped me notice where I was overcomplicating things, where I was clinging on to things I shouldn't, where I was performing busyness instead of actually choosing direction. It simply reflected my own thinking back to me. I do want to be really clear about something though. This is not a replacement for a human coach. A human coach brings intuition, challenge, lived experience, emotional nuance. AI cannot replicate that. So for me, this was a sounding board and a quick sense check when I was too in my own head. And sometimes that's enough to create movement. I'm really curious to know in the comments, if you gave this a go, what would you want to untangle first? That's it for this video. Until next time, keep careering.